You're someone with a vision for your practice, for your side hustle, and for your personal journey. But when it comes to establishing your path on how to get to where you want to be with your practice, things get a little messy. You're also someone who'd prefer to go in person instead of to groups and listening to everyone else's story. To me, it sounds like you could benefit from one-on-one consulting with our experienced practice of the practice consultants. From $5.95 a month and up, you can work with a consultant that will give you more direction and practical tried and tested tips matched to you and your goals. For more information, visit practiceofthepractice.com/apply. Again, that's practiceofthepractice.com/apply. This is the Practice of the Practice podcast with Joe Sanok, session number 1111. Welcome to the Practice of the Practice podcast. We are going to be doing a series between now and the beginning of November, where we are going to be playing all of our Level Up Week trainings that we did in September of 2024. We're going to be talking about from empty to overflowing, talking about your branding, talking about multi-locations, shifting from 1099 to W-2, all sorts of different things during this series. And if you want help from one of our consultants for every single phase of practice, or if you're just not sure where you fit in our memberships versus our consulting, I would love for you to talk with me over at practiceofthepractice.com/apply. We can schedule a 30-minute call together and dig into all those different areas that you want to get started. Again, that's practiceofthepractice.com/apply. Now let's get started with the Level Up Week series. Welcome. I am so glad that you are here hanging out with me and our panel today. We have an exciting panel of people that we're going to be introducing in just a second. We are talking all about going from solo practice to group practice. Now, if you don't know me, welcome. I'm Joe Sanok. I founded Practice of the Practice in 2012 and then started the Practice of Practice podcast in 2013. Honestly, it was because I had a counseling practice called Mental Wellness Counseling, and I had no idea what to do when it comes to business stuff back then. And so just started interviewing people and sharing my story. And as I learned, got to help a lot of people along the way. We've helped over 2,500 practices start, grow, and scale at this point, bringing in over $250 million for those practices. So it's really amazing. I wrote a book, do a lot of other things, but get to play with my two daughters who I have full physical custody of. And so just get to be a single dad and have lots of fun with them. So we're going to have our panelists actually introduce themselves because, they each have these really extensive bios. But I really want to make sure that we dive into just getting the panel going. So why don't we kick it off with you, Vicky? We'll put you up first.
All right, sure. My name is Vicky Anagnostopoulos. I am a clinical psychologist located in the DC area. I could probably share a lot of pieces, but I started my practice right out of graduate school. Actually, Joe, your podcast essentially helped me launch my solo practice. So kind of passively through podcast listening was really, really helpful for me to be able to actually launch a pretty successful one. So I've had it for about 6-7 years now. And last year I was planted a seed by a colleague I was networking with that, if you're thinking about group practice, you could probably do it a lot sooner than you think. And all it took was that before I really picked a name. I called my practice the Perfect Therapy Group because I work a lot with perfectionists. There's a lot of anxiety, a lot of imposter syndrome. I also work with a lot with athletes. So between perfectionism and athletes, current and former ones, obviously you can imagine there's a lot of overlap in those populations. So it's a pretty good niche, especially in this area, in this metro area. And so it's really been, my practice has been full and I'm looking to take on some more. I actually just verbally hired an admin this week. I'm about to present an offer letter there, and then I'm bringing on a postdoc and hoping to hire another therapist or two later this year. So that's kind of where I'm at practice-wise.
Corrales, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about your practice, where it's located, and kind of starting a group. A paragraph or so, and then we're going to dig into some questions. So.
Yeah, thank you for having me here this morning. So yeah, I have been practicing for over 10 years now. I'm a licensed mental health counselor, and my entire practice is actually virtual. And I'm practicing based here in Orlando, Florida. And I just hired two clinicians that are joining me for my group practice. And my goal is to maybe hire two or three more by the end of the year. And in the process, I'm also looking for an admin as well.
Awesome. And Todd, tell us about you and your practice.
Hello, good morning, everybody. Sorry, I'm getting over a sinus congestion right now, so if you guys can't make out what I'm saying, just text me in the chat. But
All good.
awesome. So yes, my name is Todd Bakari, LPC therapist here in the state of New Jersey. Started my practice unofficially in 2020. At that time, I wasn't fully licensed, but I was doing a lot of like workshops, public speaking events. I became fully licensed in 2022. Therefore, I started my practice officially as far as offering therapy in 2023. 2023 was pretty much a really good year for me. My practice is also virtual. We focus on helping athletes when it comes to mental wellness issues outside of their sport. So we're helping athletes that are struggling with anxiety, depression, family stress, just the stress of from school, pressure from coaches, different things like that. We help our athletes with that. Currently, right now, so after 2023, the year picked up pretty fast, and I also was in the same situation as everybody else, as far as like, you know what, let me try to bring on additional help. So same as Vicky, I was listening to your podcast, Joe, and I think I got into group practice launch like the last day before the deadline.
Oh, nice.
I was listening to one of your episodes, and at the end, the speaker pretty much was promoting the group. So I was able to jump in. A lot of great resources. And currently, right now, with my practice, I do have one admin staff. I have two pre-licensed therapists and one clinical supervisor to supervise those pre-licensed therapists. So right now, still in the early stages of developing everything, but I feel like I have a solid team to get the ball rolling.
Amazing. And I love just hearing how quickly the first three of you have just been able to launch. And Todd, just one thing about your branding, I love it, that knowing you work with athletes, like seeing your professional headshot, that it's a zip up and that, even showing up for this webinar, like you've got your Nike hat on, like
Yeah.
you are living the brand. And like so many people would second guess themselves and feel like they're an imposter by dressing how they want to dress. And it's like, I love that. So Christina, tell us about you and your practice.
I'm Christina Bland, and I'm a licensed professional counselor and a registered play therapist. My practice is in Kearney, Missouri. So we've got like 10, 11,000 people, I think, in our town. So it's a smaller town, and we're about 30 minutes north of Kansas City. So what we are is kind of like a generalized therapy practice, but we really want to focus on quality care. So that's our big thing. So, we started out with group practice launch. I think in September is when it started, October maybe. And then I have two clinicians hired on. So it's really been a great experience because it's a lot of things that I didn't realize that I didn't know. And then, just having the system for it. So yeah, getting a lot of really good growth and then building connections in the schools. And so I also go out to the schools and do therapy, so it's really a good connection for the community.
Awesome. And Milo, tell us about your practice.
Yes, good morning. My name is Milo Wilson. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist in practice in Richmond, Virginia. I too, like several others here, got my motivation to go into solo practice from listening to some of Joe's podcasts. I was in a soul crushing job and was looking for a way out, and that helped me to get the motivation and confidence to take that step to do that. So I did that 2018 part-time, built for the next couple of years while working at a different job that was less soul crushing, and then went full-time in 2021 and has been growing ever since. And I'm excited to bring on some clinicians throughout the year. My practice focuses on helping LGBTQ plus communities and also focuses on evidence-based practice, the intersection of those two things.
So awesome. Well, so those of you that are here, we only have an hour. Yesterday, when we had our panel about starting a practice, it was clear we could have just gone for hours and hours. And so we have 5 people here today. So I'm not going to say a question and then have all 5 of you answer because we'd only get through like 1 or 2 questions. So if you have questions for our panel, please drop those in the chat. So put those in there. I'll be reading them. We're going to go through them. We're just going to kind of hear their point of view of how they went from solo to group? Like, how do they add that first person? Then how do they scale a little bit up? A lot of you here today have a solo practice you're looking to grow. Maybe you have a struggling group practice and you're looking at how do I kind of launch that a little bit more. So we're going to be asking them questions throughout. This is really for you, the audience that's here. I don't have a bunch of scripted questions. I have a couple to get us started, but drop those in the chat. Also, please, one thing that is so great as a presenter is to know that you're engaged. So if you see that little reaction where there's emojis, if someone says something that you're like, that is amazing, will you either put that as a reaction or put that in the chat? We want to see some mind blown. We want to see some confetti, some champagne, some dancing girls, whatever it is that to you represents what our speakers are saying. Because sometimes it feels like you're just talking into the void. So let's have a little bit of fun here today. I already see some killer emojis coming in the chat. Thanks, David, for kicking that off for us. All right, why don't we start? Why don't we start with you, Todd? So, Todd, if you think about when you made that transition from solo to group, like what were indicators that for you said, like, yeah, there's potential here that I need to go after?
So that's a great question. So thinking back to last summer, I would definitely say my practice filled up really fast, to the point where I had to start like slowing down my marketing. I had to start slowing down the intakes I was doing, just because I didn't have enough time. So currently my personal life, at that time, my son was only 1 year old last summer. So like I had a lot going on in my personal life. I was still working with another agency. So it was just like, I feel like my hands were in so many different pots that I couldn't really grow the practice where I wanted to take it. So just seeing like referrals coming in and me saying I have to put you on a waiting list or refer them to other practices was when it was like, okay, like I think I need to start thinking about how I can stop doing that and keep people in-house.
Mm-hmm. Corrales, what about you? When did you know it was time to start adding people into the practice?
Well, I think for me, it was just transition from a professional level to where I was ready to expand organically. I also was inspired by a colleague of mine that had taken those steps, and she kind of gave me that inspiration, that jump that I needed to do. And for me, it was all about accessibility and for people to be able to reach me and use their insurance. So I had that ability to do that.
Now, Christina, I'm wondering, after you decided, okay, I want to start a group practice, what were some of the first actions you took that really helped you get to where you're at now that you'd say, wow, those were smart decisions early on to fast forward things for yourself?
Right. And so whenever we first, like, we've known that we wanted to do, so I'm doing this alongside my husband. He does logistics. I'm like the face of the business, right? And so we knew that this was ultimately what we wanted to do. And then, so we'd been looking around, like, how do I start a group practice? And we found some resources that were helpful, but it was a lot of Googling. And then we saw this program, I think at the last Level Up week, and it was like, wow, like this sounds amazing. And then getting into it, there's a system in place, and even sometimes I would spend hours on Google, even after on the program, trying to find specific answers. And then I'd be like, oh yeah, I have this group practice launch that I'm a part of. And the resource would be right there. And I wasted hours searching for whenever the resources was there. So just getting a part of the system was very helpful.
Yeah, to me, I think that idea of when you're in a membership with other people that are like doing what you want to do, like, yeah, you can go learn things and dink around a lot, or do you want to just implement? Like that whole idea that we're past the information age, we're in the implementation age. Like there's plenty of information out there, but you're going to spend hours searching and questioning, being like, is this the right way? Whereas if you can find people that you're just like, they've implemented already, I want to be around them, let's do this. Now, Milo and Vicky, I want to ask you a question, and I'm going to start kind of we're having tons of questions coming already, so I'm done facilitating my own questions. I kicked it off officially. So the two of you, did you hire someone to do your marketing? And maybe the other three that aren't answering, if you could just put in the chat, how did you handle marketing so that people can kind of hear your point of view without us taking up all the time? But Vicky, let's start with you. Like, how did you think through marketing your group practice? And then Milo, we'll go to you after Vicky's done.
Sure. So with my practice, I have such a niche. So I really was marketing to the same areas that I've had. So for me, I overlap a little bit with Todd in terms of working with some athletes, but it's really like the top performer, the perfectionist, the folks that have anxiety. So I really think about it from a boots on the ground perspective, really creating personal connections with people. So whether it's doctors, physical therapists, I'll connect with nutritionists as well. So it really depends on like sort of who are the ancillary people that my ideal client tends to interact with. And so I try to network with those folks who might be good referral sources. Cardiologists specifically, when you think about anxiety and panic attacks, for example. So I started thinking about it in that way, but I also rebranded my website. I actually use Jean's services, which have been really great. I'm actually working on editing it yet again to add a blog section and rework so that I can add my team pages as well. So I actually think the rebranding was really important to shift what my language was like and from I to we, but also really focusing on those mission, vision, and values, which is obviously what I learned through Group Practice Launch 2. I echo what Christina was saying as well about just having a structure, a system. To me, I really like learning. So actually having webinars that I can also revisit, because to me, it's almost the repetition that is really useful to hear things over and over and over again at different phases, because otherwise you get really overwhelmed with all of the different parts there. But marketing, I would say, like even just adjusting my website, I got referrals even from Google searches. So if you actually use the niche areas and the language that clients are searching for you. So for example, perfectionism is a big one. Someone actually found me recently by searching perfectionism support group. Now I don't have a support group, but they found my website because it's called the Perfect Therapy Group and I talk about perfectionism. So that to me is telling me that my branding and my website is working well.
That is such a good point. Like just yesterday, when I forget which webinar we were in, there was a couples therapist and she had a question, and we just went onto Google and typed in, "Why does my husband?" and then looked to see what people were searching. It was like, "Why does my husband hate me? Why does my husband not talk? Why does my husband fart so much?" Why? And it's like those are all things that. And then it was like we did, "Why does my wife?" and it was like all sorts of other things that were funny. But like people are searching those things, and so that idea that we have to be all clinical, it's like if people are searching, "Why is my husband giving me the silent treatment?" and you're a couples therapist, and then you have a whole article on that, that's just going to be mind blowing for that individual. Milo, tell us about your marketing journey.
So I started off doing very little marketing. So back when I was started off launching in 2018, I really had no clue what I was doing. I knew how to be a therapist, but running the business was like foreign territory to me. So I really didn't do a whole lot of marketing. And at the point that I went full time in 2021, I had developed name recognition in the community. My niche is enough that, people who are looking for a therapist who specializes in working with LGBTQ plus folks, there's only a handful of us in town and they're going to find one of us. So I think that just kind of that slow build and building reputation within the community was part of it. I'm also involved in some local LGBT community groups, which I know spreads some word of mouth through that as well. I have done a little bit of networking with some medical practices that also specialize in working with the LGBTQ plus community. And so there's been some kind of, mutual referrals back and forth. I think another thing that was really helpful, speaking to Vicky's point about website, is when I launched full time, I did a website revamp. I used Brighter Vision. So they took care of all of the SEO, and that really increased website traffic and got a lot more people in the door that way. I am starting to work with a marketing professional here locally who is going to be helping with, adding some social media to use those connections for SEO and all the ways in which those things intertwine, as well as a few other things.
So awesome. The next question is, which of you have independent contractors and which of you have employees? So maybe raise your hand if you have employees, and then the other ones that aren't raising their hand, we will know have independent contractors. So employees. So, you have both. Okay, so for clinicians, primarily clinicians as employees, mostly. Okay, cool. So, maybe, Todd, why don't you share with us why you went the W-2 route? And then Corrales, maybe you can talk about why you went the 1099 route.
Awesome. So the reason why I went W-2 is because, number one, the therapists I have coming on, they're pre-licensed therapists. So that means I have to be a little bit more hands-on with them with their development through becoming a clinician. So, and I also wanted to create a culture with my practice, with us focusing on helping athletes and, At the same time, we do focus on helping athletes, but we do take clients that are not athletes as well, just to put that out there. But just with them being new licensed therapists, I wanted to give them an opportunity to grow with the team. And I wanted to be really hands-on with their development throughout that process. So I felt like W-2 was the best approach compared to 1099 for my onboard clinicians.
Mm-hmm. Corrales, what about you?
Right now I'm working mostly with licensed people, and because I want to maximize my capital as much as I can and keep things simple. I might eventually evolve into W-2, but it's just a good fit for me right now.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think one thing that we're noticing, at least in regards to our consulting clients, that a lot of people are switching from that 1099 to W-2, and mostly because it seems like those people that in general want to be a 1099 contractor oftentimes want to start their own practices. And so we're seeing a lot of these group practices that kind of launch people, and then just within, a year or two, they're full and they're like, well, I'm going to go do my own thing. Whereas the person that has a W-2 mentality, they want a job that they can show up to, that they can get paid well for. Your competition isn't private practice. It's CMH, it's the local nonprofits, it's things like that. So if you can pay even 5% more for a part-time person at 20 hours a week, 15 sessions a week, or, full-time person, 25 clinical hours and maybe 35 hours a week, you can be really competitive in that. But, I think each situation you want to think through that. And that's where, having, whether it's group practice launch or other people to bounce those ideas off of, to say, okay, here's the pros and cons of each of those. There's benefits. And if you do it right, then, you're not going to get in trouble with the IRS. It's when people, do it incorrectly that you have some liability there. So that's where I think bouncing it off of other people like you guys have is great. Christina, we have a question that came in, and the other four of you, if you have other insights on this, feel free to throw that into the chat. Once you started hiring people, how did your marketing change?
So since we're a generalized therapy practice, so I work with kids, teens, and women, which is a very targeted group. And so with my practice growing, I wanted to have clinicians who saw men, couples, families, and really target everybody. And so we had to really shift our marketing towards focusing on what our other clinicians offer, which is what I don't offer. And so targeting it towards them and really focusing a lot of the Google ads and making pages specifically for services for men, services for couples, and things like that to grow them.
Awesome. This next one I'm going to just open up to the group, and maybe we can have a couple of you kind of weigh in on this and how you would think through this. I think there's value in just saying, like, how would you think through this situation? So we have Chad asking, I'm in solo practice and not getting much traction. Do I wait until I am full in my solo practice before starting a group? I don't really want to have an office. I want to do virtual and walk and talk therapy. How soon should I bring on an admin or VA for calls? Well, let's not cover the VA thing yet. Let's just talk about starting a group practice. When do you think it's appropriate to start a group practice if you aren't getting a ton of traction in your solo practice?
For me, I'm a numbers person, I will admittedly say I'm on the risk averse side. So if it was me making that decision, I would want to make sure that I had enough income to both pay myself, keep the practice afloat for at least a couple months before bringing on another person.
Awesome. How else would people think through it? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll jump in right after that. So once you find out the details behind the financial piece, I think right now is actually a good time to start it, because you don't want to wait till you're completely full, and like you don't have enough time to market a new clinician, or you don't have enough time to do the onboarding process. So I would definitely, like, if you're in that position right now, I would try to take your time with finding the right clinician. But when you find him or her, bring her on board now, and then you guys can grow together as the practice grows as well.
Love that.
Yeah, you got to keep in mind too, just because you hire someone does not mean that they're going to have a full caseload immediately. That's going to take a few months to ramp up as well. So that's all time that you're buying while you do your own marketing. So
yeah, great point. I'm thinking, especially if there's an area that, was it Chad? Let me just scroll. Yeah, that Chad doesn't cover. There's complementary services. Where is he referring out? Are there times of the day or times of the week that he just doesn't want to work? Like, I don't want to work weekends, but I want to offer virtual therapy or walk and talk on the weekends. And then, making sure it's not like a salaried position. You can always have it be per session or a percentage-based model, even with a W-2. And so, creating that kind of risk-averse side, you definitely don't want to have to be paying them a certain amount per week for them to be empty. Cool. Let's jump into, I would love for Vicky and Christina, what are your thoughts on how soon to bring on an admin or VA for phone calls?
I guess I'll jump in. So I'm actually very grateful to bring somebody on because I think it's just going to expand my time. I think with GPL, Joe, you helped us kind of look at really return on investment. So if you really just price it out and figure what's it going to cost me to have an admin for 5 hours a week versus me doing a clinical hour, it's definitely well worth it. So for me, I'm just now looking to hire and onboard people. So I haven't even brought anyone on. I would say do it before then. I would actually try to onboard an admin as soon as you're looking to hire somebody on, so you can onboard the admin and have processes starting to get in place as best you can and earlier than you think that you might want to. And just to make a quick comment about that last question, I was just going to say, make sure you're paying attention because I'm very practical and in terms of the risk. If you're not getting traction and not getting referrals, you might want to first start focusing on networking and building your referral base before you start hiring somebody. If you're not even getting people in the door, I don't know if that's how bad it might be, but make sure you're actually getting a little bit of traction because your referrals are going to tell you which way to go. So just for what that's worth.
Awesome.
And I agree with Todd in the comments here saying since yesterday. I don't have an admin right now, but I'm recognizing fully the need for it because my capacity is so split, trying to do the group practice, managing employees, managing my own caseload and everything that I have going on, and then trying to do intakes and calls and then making sure all the paperwork is in. And so that's where an admin would really take off a lot of that stress. So I'm at that point yesterday, where I need to get on it and get that admin to have that extra support. So that way I can keep focusing on what I need to do.
Awesome. I just put in the chat, one of our sponsors, so full disclosure, they are a sponsor, but we have been looking for a good VA sponsor for a while. Well Received, if you go to wellreceived.com/Joe, they're giving 50% off of your first 3 months of it. And their plans are $500 to $1,000 a month, but you buy a certain number of minutes. So it's nice that you're not just paying for someone to sit there, but they have 24/7, they have bilingual services. They'll do chat, they'll do the intakes. So definitely an awesome resource. We've sent a bunch of our consulting clients there and heard really good things about them. I am so excited about Alma. When I had my private practice, I struggled building my caseload, attracting the right clients, managing the business side. And honestly, one of the reasons I didn't take insurance was it was so difficult to navigate. So many of my consulting clients deal with these problems as well. And Alma supports clinicians in building rewarding private practices with simplified insurance credentialing in under 45 days, enhanced reimbursement rates, and guaranteed 2-week payback. Plus, a free profile in their searchable, filterable directory, making it easy for clients who are the right fit for your practice to find you. Learn more about how Alma could support your private practice at helloalma.com/Joe. That's hello, ALMA.com/Joe to learn more. All right, next, I'll just open this one up to the group for a couple comments. I've also slowed down marketing because I am too full. How did you ramp marketing efforts back up to fill other people quickly enough to know you were ready to hire and fill them?
So I'll start this one off. To be honest with you, the clinicians I brought on board, I was transparent with them, letting them know that this is my first year doing group practice. Therefore, you're not coming on board to a full caseload. So that took the stress off of me, So I didn't feel the pressure like, oh my God, I need to get them filled with clients or anything. So I think for me, it's just like all the ideas I had when I was in solo practice and I didn't start, I'm able to start now as far as developing relationship with schools, athletic directors, coaches, trainers, even doctors' offices like Vicky mentioned earlier. So I think, just being transparent with my clinicians, letting them know like, okay, while you guys are getting approved by the board for your clinical supervision, I'm working on the marketing piece, and the plan is within a month or two, you might have 2 or 3 clients, and then we'll build as time goes. So, and what I've noticed with the clients with the clinicians that I brought on, they're okay with that. They don't want to come on to a full caseload and now they're drowning in paperwork and they're drowning in trying to figure out how to be a good clinician. So I think transparency is definitely really important.
Yeah. One rule of thumb we often say is when you're 60% full, that should be like the latest you start hiring. That really like to make sure that if you're 60% full, I mean, because you figure, say it takes a month to find a good person, a month to then have them leave their other job or get onboarded, a month to get full. mean, you're talking 3 months from when you're 60% full, and then ideally you'll be 100% full by the time they're full, and then it's like, okay, let's kind of keep that going. Next question is, and this is a really good one from Aaron. My practice is full and stopped all marketing, but unsure steps on how to find clinicians to hire and what that process looks like. Who's hired in the last month? Any of you hired in the last month? Okay, Todd. So why don't we start with Todd? What were some of your steps? And then maybe of the four of you, like, Christina, I don't think we've heard from you in a little bit. We'll jump to you after Todd.
So for me, I would say I'm gonna tell you my steps, but don't really follow it to like everything I'm saying because I definitely I sometimes try to be a perfectionist. So for me, it was definitely having like the job description in order, having my contracts in order, have my attorney review that. So I kind of was overboard. I just wanted to be as prepared as possible before I started marketing the position. But after I did all the behind the scenes work, I marketed the jobs on Indeed, and I got a lot of traction on Indeed. So what I did was every time I got not a referral, every time I got an application completed on Indeed, I would do a Google search on a person and try to find their LinkedIn account. Just kind of do like my own research on a person if their resume stuck out to me. Just so I can kind of like get a visual of who they are and their different background and stuff that's not on the resume. After I completed that, then I started to conduct the interviews. So for all the people I have coming on board now, I did at least 2 interviews with them. All of them were virtual because some of my clinicians are located in different parts of New Jersey. So completed all the interviews virtually. Then after that, checked the references and then did the background checks and then brought them on board. So it sounds like a lot of steps, but as you're doing it, it all can be done in like a 3-week process or a 2-week process, depending on your availability. But for me, I definitely in the beginning, I really was like fine tuning the job description. Some of my members in here know I was, fine tuning the job description, the contracts, like to the point where I was just like, okay, Ty, like, let's just go. Let's just try and see what happens.
So good. And Christina.
Right. So I found my employees through Indeed. It was, I did LinkedIn and then I haven't really had much success with LinkedIn. I know other people have, but Indeed is where I found my employees and really, I think just having that system and practice of the practice, where it walks you through like step by step, this is what you need. Because I thought I knew what I needed. Again, I thought, I had a general idea, but I didn't realize, how much I didn't know. So having, I need a job description, like I need all of these steps in place. And now that I've done it twice, with 2 clinicians, now I'm looking to hire another person on and I have a system in place now. I have an actual checklist that I go through, and I think that's the thing is like, it's been really hard to hire on those first clinicians because you're learning everything. And then now I am like, my fear level is like way down here because I already have the system in place. I already know what to do. I just have to implement it. So I feel a lot less stressed with this next hire that I'm working on. So just having that system in place and then, following the group practice launch resources has been incredibly beneficial for everything.
So awesome. I'm going to share with you guys something I put together for some of my consulting clients. We're going to be turning it into a thing that we sell and give away to our membership communities in the next couple months. But this is like literally just like behind the scenes. We don't usually show all this, but this is the forecaster that I put together. We're going to be launching. It's the when to hire calculator. And so I see there's a bunch of questions about like, when should I hire? And this will be available soon. We're also going to be releasing a staff wage calculator. That's actually going to be a bonus for anyone that signs up during Level Up Week. But for this, you're just looking at the numbers of average new intake calls. So say you had 10 new intake calls per week, and of those, 70% of those actually scheduled an intake, and then say 90% of them actually showed up. So you got some good systems, people coming in. And then we want to put the average total sessions the client completes. So do they come for 10 total? Do they come for 15, 20? So say they come for 15 sessions and it's, 150 per session. If we say, what is full for the new clinician? So say we're looking for a full-time person, so 25. And then for you as the owner, what's your percentage profit from the gross profit? So usually you're going to get anywhere from 15 to 30%. So let's just do, say, 22%. So what this does is it says that this new clinician should be full within 3.96 or 4 weeks. They should be full based on these numbers. And so if they're not, then you say, well, are my numbers actually what this is? So you can say, okay, if we end up having only 3 calls per week, okay, it's going to take us 13 weeks to fill this person up versus if we, are getting 20 a week, maybe we're doing some, pay-per-click advertising, it should only take 2 weeks. So once that person is full, your profit would be $825 per week. And then looking at some of the lifetime value for you. So then this also forecasts, if we look at, amount per week. Now this is, no one's going to see 151 sessions per week, but at these numbers, if we said, okay, they cap out every 2 weeks, then you're hiring every 2 weeks. This starts to add up pretty quickly in regards to your monthly 50K, if you just kept hiring. So those are the kind of numbers, things that we're putting together for you and for our communities to just really make sure that you have access to just good forecasting. So I'm going to dive in here. One of the questions was specifically around like a 60-40 split versus per hour. How many patients do they need to see? For me, I'll answer this, and then if there's a couple other ideas. To me, right now, it seems like the pay per session is attracting more people that want to stick with you than the percentage-based model. Because the percentage-based model, then you're like knowing all over the place, like what money's coming in. And I think a lot of the clinicians then maybe aren't as likely to stay, but would love to hear percentage-based versus hourly.
So for our practice, we're a W-2. And so again, this was really helpful because we didn't know, like, how do we find out how to pay? And so it did show, like, I can't remember what the 1099 was, but I believe the W-2 is 40 to 45% of the session. And so we took the average because we're also an insurance-based practice. So we have different pay rates. So we kind of did the average of that. And then what's 40 to 45%. And then if a clinician has more skills or more values that I can see, then we might pay a little bit more. But that's how we did it for ours.
Awesome.
My understanding from some other group practice centers in the area is that, at least in the DC area, I can speak to, the 60-40 split is certainly common, but actually to hold on to contractors in this area, it's closer to a 65 or 70% portion to hold on to them, is what I've been hearing from other folks. I'm going the W-2 route. I also want to create a training program, which is another incentive for folks to join my practice. Is like it's beyond just what money you're making too, but similar to what Christina was saying, we use this percentage for W-2 that's going to be less, but you want to factor in not just I do the hourly rate. So I set about a third of the rate for now so that there's room to grow so that it ends up taking about 40 to 45% eventually once I add other benefits that I'd like to eventually offer. I just don't want to offer it from the beginning until I get my numbers and my ducks in a row before adding on to that.
And Vicki, there's a follow-up question here that I think would be applicable to what you just said, and maybe others of you could jump in here too. Did you take on provisionally licensed clinicians? And if so, do you offer clinical supervision? I hear a lot of different things from local colleagues about the pros and cons of all this in addition to IRS considerations. Let me just speak real quick to the IRS side of that. So if you have a 1099 contractor, my understanding from my attorney, and this is just personal experience, I'm not an accountant or attorney, is that if you're offering clinical supervision, that really sets you up for the IRS potentially coming after you, because supervision, they're supposed to be independent. And so when I had my practice, there were 1099s. I probably would do W-2s if I were to do that all over again now. But 1099s, then they would get paid in the practice. And then if they wanted me as a supervisor, they had to pay me for that. And so it was, we had a group supervision model. So it was like $30 an hour. And I had, 8 people or so that came to that. And in Michigan, you don't have to have specific individual ones. So I would say that's one thing to think about if you're doing 1099s. Vicki, how are you thinking through, because I know you have kind of a teaching component, the provisionally licensed or limited license?
Yeah. So my first hire is actually a postdoc, so I'm waiting for him to finish out his dissertation to get on board. But so I'll be supervising him directly. But the thing that I factor in terms of the hourly rate, which is lower than I would offer a fully licensed clinician, is because I'm factoring in the time that I'm spending. So I'm placing a dollar amount on the number of hours that I'm using for supervision, because I also want to eventually outsource that or have someone else in the practice incorporate the supervision. So I eventually am going to pay someone else for the supervision. So I just lower the amount to factor in what that is going to look like over time. So just I would just recommend that when especially if you're going the W-2 route, I would do your entire calculation around what benefits you want to offer eventually and work backwards from there, because it's better to start lower and steadily increase than to offer too much and then say, hey, I'm going to pay you less because I can't give you health insurance otherwise, or I can't do this otherwise.
So good. Other ways people are thinking through a teaching practice or things like that?
So for me, for my practice, the pre-licensed therapists do not receive supervision from me. So I have a contracted supervisor, clinical supervisor part with the practice. So they get clinical supervision from that individual. So now as far as them being accepted by the board, they had to complete their supervised application, send that to New Jersey State Board. But then also I had to send over the job description and also the contract that I have with the clinical supervisor, and also a written up consent that I, advise that, or I'm aware that my pre-licensed therapist is working with this contracted supervisor. But I'm also not an attorney, so I would definitely talk to your attorney in your state to review that, discuss that before you make any of those final decisions.
Yeah. Let me just show that staff wage calculator real quick that we're releasing to the communities and doing as a bonus. Right now it's password protected. So there's a video walking you through how to use this, but it's great. So what you do is you just put in like your total full-time staff. Say you have two, say your average reimbursement rate is 175 per session. Total sessions a full-time person does, say 25. Say they work 48 weeks a year. That's going to then why is this not working? Well, we will have to figure out why this isn't working. I must be in the like beta test one. So it's supposed to add it up right there. Before we give it to you, obviously, we want that to work. I'm going to let John know that immediately after this, but then it'll tell you your profit, your net profit. And then you can look at, we were talking about how your owner time, your supervision time, admin time, you can add all that in there. It'll add it up. And I might be in the wrong one. That's not the final live one. But then you can put in your annual marketing budget, your insurance percentage billing, and then it'll give you those numbers as to what your net profit is. And so just having that kind of like running of numbers, assuming it adds it up for you like it's supposed to, which, we're imperfect here. We're doing our best. So, but running those numbers to know, okay, when should I be hiring? What's my profit margin? If I know that every full-time person that's 25 sessions a week is an extra $1,000 a month in my pocket, then you can start to run those numbers as to your scaling. Awesome. Todd, specific question for you. How did you do the background search? Any apps or software that were helpful?
Yeah, I responded back to that person.
Oh, cool.
So at first I was using my attorney, which was definitely expensive. So now I have the payroll software of Gusto, and they have a feature on there. And I believe the HR feature is $8 additional. Double check me, but it's like $8 additional per staff. And then you can run background checks through that. So that's what I'm doing moving forward.
Yeah, we use Gusto also. I think they give 6 months for free if you use gusto.com/Joe. So if you're checking that out. Question, I'm taking insurance because that makes it more accessible for the community. I see also for financial stability, but I would like to transition into out of network when I start a group. Is it best to transition to out of network later on in the group or before you start the group? Anyone have some thoughts on that?
I think that's a good question. I don't have the specific answer to that, but we use Practice Solutions. We found them through one of the webinars or podcasts here, and they gave a lot of great information, and they're actually really honest about their billing process. So that's why we signed on with them. But they do filing for out-of-network billing, and that's been really helpful just to offer it as a benefit, just to say, hey, you want to take insurance, we do have out-of-network benefits, so you can use those if you want. And so some people are really receptive to that if we don't offer their specific insurance.
Mm-hmm. Great question in here about would a healthcare attorney be the best person to chat with about how to properly hire pre-licensed folks? We serve New Jersey and New York. My guess would be an employment attorney would be best, but anyone have a different opinion than that? You're allowed to disagree with me. All right.
I hit the jackpot by finding an attorney who was formerly a practicing nurse. So kind of had knowledge of both sides. That's helpful.
Awesome. We've got some resources people are putting in here. So question, and Christina and Milo, you all jumped in on this question, but I'm just going to say because other people may have it. So if they're W-2, are they salaried? They don't always have to be. Like in the same way that, there's W-2 employees at McDonald's that get paid per hour. You can have that as long as the total ends up being above minimum wage, which obviously would, be way above minimum wage. All right, let's see if there's any other questions we missed. Sorry, is out-of-network billing different than private pay? I assume yes. Do you have to contract with the insured to do out-of-network billing? It's a great question. I'll just hit that one real quick. So out-of-network billing is when the client is paying you and then they're seeking potential reimbursement from their insurance for out of network. You don't have to be working with the insurance. Typically, some insurances will reimburse better or different if you are listed as an out of network provider. We recommend using Mentaya. They really help with a lot of that out of network. So Mentaya, I can put that in here. Oop, let me type this in. Mentaya helps with that whole process. And so, yeah, other ways that people think through private pay, someone just pays. They don't usually even want a super bill or a receipt, whereas out of network, they pay and then seek potential reimbursement. Other ways you think through out of network or private pay that I missed in that quick kind of conversation, soliloquy?
I mean,
Awesome.
I've always been
Yeah, go
private pay, but I was just going to say that if I were considering it, my understanding is that it's a lot easier to fill with insurance because you always get inquiries within networks. So I don't think you really have to try as much in terms of networking and things. So I would actually try to at least start planting seeds to start growing the practice in a private pay way. If you're trying to shift in that direction, I would do it earlier rather than later, is what I would suggest.
So awesome. So would love just a couple sentences, maybe a paragraph or so from each of you, just on when it comes to starting a group practice, like what do you wish you would have known? If you could go back to you in the months leading up to it, when you were sorting through stuff, considering it, thinking through it, like if you could go back and give yourself a little bit of advice when you were kind of on the fence sorting it out, like what would you say to yourself? Let's kick it off with Christina.
I think I'd say buckle up because it's an emotional roller coaster, honestly, to do this. But, having a support team and then, we've also had small groups within Circle that have been really helpful. I've always have, like Milo and Todd calling me out and challenging me. And so they kind of become my inner voice of like whenever I need to do something. So I kind of picture them in my head. But yeah, I think it's an emotional roller coaster, but my why has always been at the forefront, like why I want to do this. So making sure I'm really grounded in that. And then remembering, being a therapist to yourself of like, remembering like those inner strengths and those inner qualities, remembering why did we start out to this? Why am I geared towards this? What is my motivation for this? And that helps keep you grounded and keeps you centered along with that support team of people around you, encouraging you and walking alongside of you.
Awesome. Who do you want to pass it to?
Corrales.
Corrales. All right.
Yeah, my advice is you're really in the right place using platforms like Practice at the Practice. I just wish I have this kind of coaching and guidance. I would have started way earlier, right? Because I have been in solo practice for over 10 years. I just didn't have this nice organized step by step on how to move on from solo to practice and feel the support and the community. So that is my advice. Find a platform that's going to work for you where you're going to feel the community, and Practice at the Practice is what gave me that. So you're not alone. You don't have to do this alone.
Oh, thank you so much for that. That's wonderful. Who do you want to pass it to?
Todd, take it over.
All right, Todd.
Yeah, I love questions like this, reflecting questions. So if I can go back to Todd back in last summer, I would definitely say it's okay not to know everything. I think what was holding me back in the beginning stages was like I need to find all these answers. And like Christina mentioned earlier, I was spending nights and all day, all my free time just Googling, researching things to the point where I started pushing myself further away from the actual goal that I set. So I think I would go back and tell young Todd that it's okay not to know everything. On top of that, I would say definitely when I decided to join the group, I would definitely say increase self-care. Because like Christina mentioned, like this is definitely a roller coaster, and there's times when imposter syndrome sneaks in and, you start doubting yourself, you start questioning yourself, you start just kind of focusing on work and just, working on contracts and onboarding stuff. So I would say self-care has definitely been a good answer for me now to balance out my personal life and work life. And then lastly, I wrote it down so I don't forget. And lastly, I would say join this group. I would say the small groups have been like everything I was looking for, meeting with everybody on this panel right now, hearing their experience, hearing what they went through, hearing some of the challenges they're facing, sharing my challenges, and also being vulnerable too. I love my girlfriend. I love the mother of my son. But sometimes when I'm talking to her about the things that I'm going through as developing the business, it kind of sounds like I'm speaking a different language to her, you know? So being in a group where I could be vulnerable and let people know, like, I don't know what to do about this hire. Should I let them go or should I bring them on? It's definitely been a great space for me.
So good. Who do you want to pass it to?
I'll pass it to Vicky.
Right. I echo everything everyone was saying right there. And I will speak from a practical level outside of some of the emotional and pieces that people have mentioned. I was very, very skeptical. I will tell you, very skeptical. And I'm very glad that I joined GPL because it just gave a lot of structure and community. It gives you something to follow because otherwise you end up spinning your wheels over the details. So it really helps you both zoom out at times and also reset. And also to connect with other group practice owners was really helpful. So I guess the long and short of it would be, and I would invest now for, like, I think the resources in and of themselves are worth it. So you have a starting point for any type of data or any type of form, even just that, it is worth the money, I would say, just in terms of packaging, but you get obviously much more than that in the context of the group in a way that I didn't anticipate. And anything that we felt like we needed more of, it was really helpful. Like we were all headed toward a lot of us were headed toward the W-2 model. Like Joe listened to us and he added like 3 other seminars or webinars about the W-2 model and had folks who've done it before, which was really, really helpful in terms of guiding it. So I would just say that if you're considering it, I mean, Joe hasn't planted us here to just say this necessarily. Obviously, we enjoy the practice, but I would really say, like, I was very, very skeptical on it, and I found it very, very worth it to have all of this structure and community in place.
So awesome. Thank you. Milo, wrap this up for us.
I would echo everything that has been said. It is a big roller coaster with the emotions. I guess a couple things that I would wrap up with is saying, like, as Christina said, know your why, know your values, your personal values, your values as a clinician, your values for your practice. That will get you through the tough times when you're like, why the hell did I do this? I have no time for myself or my family. And so that can really anchor you into that why, but also it can help you make those tough decisions. Like should I hire this person? Should I not? Like you can come back to like, well, what are the values of my practice? Like, why, does this person fit within that framework? That can guide almost all of your decisions, the easy ones and the difficult ones. And especially when you feel like your emotions are pulling you this way or that way, like, should I change this? Should I do something different than I was initially thinking? Like, those values can really ground you and keep you on a path that works for you and your practice.
So awesome. I'm so proud of all 5 of you. I mean, you're impacting your communities, you're building thriving private practices that you absolutely love. You just embody everything that we hope Practice the Practice would be. So thank you so much for giving your time today. Thank you so much for letting me into your ears and into your brain and hanging out with all of us today. Bye, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to the Level Up Week series. I hope you are getting so much help out of this. If you need extra help, head on over to practiceofthepractice.com/apply. I would love to spend 30 minutes brainstorming with you as to your phase of practice